Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here. I am back again today doing another video. And in today's video, I'm going to be talking about survivor goats. And specifically, are survivor goats actually good players in some sense or another? Um, on screen here, you'll see it's a list that somebody on Reddit put together. Not me, it's somebody else. But they went into the Survivor Simulator website that a lot of people go to, and I think it's called Brand Steel. If you ever want to do it for yourself, you can pick any Survivor player from any season and put them in a simulated season. It's pretty fun if you think up like an idea for a cast that you want to try out and see how they would play together. It's randomized, but it's still fun. Well, either way, somebody put this together. It was like an all goats season of Survivor, and so I don't necessarily agree with all of them, but I thought it was a good starting point for the conversation I wanted to have, and that was, are goats actually good players? And there are some liberties with who they considered goats here. Like if you look in the bottom tribe, I wouldn't call Fishback a goat, I wouldn't call Ty a goat, I wouldn't call Dawn a goat, but there are other people who are definitely goats on here. But what I really want to get at is being a goat a successful strategy in any way? And how I want to approach this is, I'll run through kind of typically how goats are perceived and then why that may not be wrong, or like how a goat in a final 3 or final 2 should go about pleading their case for why they should win the game, and how I think there is a winning jury speech that a goat could make to win over the final tribal. And so, typically goats are seen as players who don't have any chance of winning or are highly disliked by the tribe. And so in the merge, or even before the merge, a player who's looking to win the game pairs up with them, and it's their goal to bring them to the finals. And so probably the most notorious example of this would be two people who are on this list, I believe. Let's see here. Maybe it's actually just one of them, but Philip Shepard and Natalie in Redemption Island were taken to the end as like clear goats. Nobody thought that either of them had any strategy, and they didn't, and so as a result, they lost pretty handily. And a lot of these players are very similar. Like for instance, I'm trying to look at who are like the best examples on here. Troyzan is a pretty decent example. He was a guy who, throughout his season, didn't really make any moves, didn't really do anything that spectacular. So when he got to the end, he won. When he got to the end, he lost pretty easily. Like he had essentially no chance of winning, and he acknowledged that in the final tribal. Let's see here. Other really good examples. I would say probably Becky is a good example. Like she's a really nice person and good person, but she didn't really do anything of note throughout her season, and so people saw her as a pretty clear goat. Like she had no shot of winning. And so besides the specific examples, the general archetype is somebody like Clay from Thailand. He's not on this list, but he's a great example. And Thailand is a terrible season, but it just worked well for this. Clay was considered this redneck, racist, lazy jerk, basically, by everybody. He did no work around camp. He was misogynistic. He was a racist. He was just in general not likable in any sense. And so people thought, like if he gets to the final 2, he will for sure lose. And he did. And it was actually a very close vote, but he did lose. And the thing about that season is he was guaranteed to lose because the people who didn't vote for him said that no matter what, they were not going to vote for him. So it was pretty much guaranteed that he'd lose, even though he did end up getting all the other votes. But so he's a great example of how a person rubs people the wrong way, and that's why they're a goat. And that's one end of the spectrum. Like Philip Shepard is kind of a less extreme example of that, where like he won't win at the end just because basically people get annoyed by him. Or like Sugar in Gabon, she's never gonna win just because people got annoyed by her. The other example is people like more in the line of like Albert or Becky or Tasha, where people kind of look at them and say like, well, you really didn't do anything throughout the entire game. There's actually a great video on YouTube somewhere about like all the different kinds of goats there are. There's a lot, but the basics to me are like you kind of have your passive goat, which is like that kind of like Becky and Albert and Tasha, like they kind of just did nothing. Then there's the goat of like socially annoying people. That's like the Philip and Sugar and Clay type. And then there's like the power goat, or like the goat who's in control but like doesn't is just not grasping how they're coming off, and that's like Russell Hantz or Stash from Nicaragua, where they're basically in control for most all of the game, but because they annoy people or rub them in the wrong way, they end up losing. But I'm going to kind of talk about this from the perspective of like the passive goat or the Philip Shepard, like the annoying kind of goat thing. And how could they win a season of Survivor if they got to Final Tribal? So let's take. I'm gonna try and come up with a good example and try and think through how it would work. So let's take. I guess Philip. He's our best example. He, basically did nothing throughout all of Redemption Island, and he got to the end versus Rob and lost, and he got one vote. And you could take him or Natalie. Actually, Natalie's probably a better example. Natalie from Redemption Island. She did nothing throughout the whole season and got to the end. And I guess I'm going to take either one because both have good examples of what would work for a goat. Philip's speech at the end was about, when he made his final tribal speech, it was about like how, oh, I was part of the decisions with Rob, and like I was a key part of the alliance, and I was like very integral to making all of this work. And the problem with that is that he wasn't. He was just a follower the entire time, and he didn't really do anything of note, and that's why people didn't vote for him, because he basically acted like an ass at Final Tribal and claimed like he was the mastermind next to Rob and that he was like partners in crime with him, whereas Rob was basically just dragging him all along. And I think Troyzan's probably the best example of somebody who came close to using this goat, this kind of sympathy goat tactic to get votes. But what Philip should have done, which is what Troy did do, is Troy came into final and he was like, hey, I know that I didn't make the biggest splashiest moves. I'm just happy to be at Final Tribal. This is a dream come true. I think that Troyzan could have made that speech into a better one, similarly to how if Philip would have taken that strategy, he could have had a chance. And here's how. Survivor is a game about two things. There's a two-step process to win Survivor. You, number one, have to get to day 39, and number two, you have to make a kick-ass Final Tribal Council speech and hit all the right notes. And so all of these goats, they do half of that. They're halfway there. They're one step away from winning it all. They just need a better Final Tribal speech. And some people would argue, well, if you get there and you haven't done any of the work the 39 days before, you have no chance of winning. And I don't think that's true. I think the power of persuasion is stronger than people think. If you would have had Troyzan, who I think, now that I've thought about it, Troyzan's the better example here than Philip Shepard, because Philip was so annoying, he had no chance. But Troy was very likable, but because he did nothing all season, nobody was going to vote for him. If Troy would have come in and he said, you know what, my best way of getting to day 39 and winning this game was to live in Brad's shadow and to just ride him to the final. Him and Jervis could have kind of used the same argument now that I'm thinking about it more. Jervis had a very similar game to Troy. If either of the two of them would have said, that was my best path to the final. If I would have tried to have taken down Brad or tried to have taken down Tyson, it would have backfired in my face. Maybe I get them voted out, but then shortly afterwards I'm seen as the top dog and then I'm voted out. And instead they should have made an argument around, I used them as meat shield and I never cut them because I knew it was a guaranteed final three to stay with them. And so one in the hand is worth more than two in the bush, so that's why I stayed under Tyson or under Brad, because I knew it was guaranteed top three if I did that. And how many people in Survivor can say you have guaranteed top three and guaranteed Final Tribal? And so you have to make it not seem like you were their lieutenant, but you have to make it seem like you were thinking about the game and you were actively strategizing to get yourself to day 39. If you make it seem like you were passive in any way, you'll never get votes. But if you can turn your thought into an active action, that's how you win, because you have to make your thinking and your mental strategizing make that seem like an active action. And it sounds abstract maybe a little bit, but some people think that unless you physically do something, like unless you physically cast a vote that is a blind side, you didn't make a move. But you can make moves in a number of ways, and some of them, like I'm saying, can just be mental decisions that you make. Like, let's say Jervis early on in the game says, Tyson's a big threat, I need to get him out. Jervis maybe pulls off the blind side, gets Tyson out, and then where is he? He's probably getting out booted mid-merge. Same thing with Troy. If he for some reason flips on Brad or goes away from him, if you kill it, like if in any of these kind of strategic games, if you take out the top dog, you're instantly the next top dog and top target, and then you quickly get taken out after that in most circumstances. And so for some of these players, just because of how the chips laid and how the dice rolled, they just weren't in a position to be super aggressive. And I think that needs to be laid out way more frequently when a GOAT is trying to plead their cases. They say no two players can play the exact same game and get the exact same result. If I would have played like so and so, I would have been targeted and perceived in a way different way just because of my personality. So I had to take this role and guarantee that I got to day 39. And look at this. This person played a completely different game, a completely aggressive game, put their ass on the line way more than me, and almost went home every single time. Whereas I didn't do that, but I also was never in danger. And there's something to be said about never being in danger too. And there's something to be respected about always being safe and never being the one who's just about to get voted out but doesn't. And so I think that's really the key to these GOATs trying to make their cases. You have to flip this whole thing of like safety and passivity, and a lot of times it's easy for the jury to pick that apart and make it seem like it's a weakness, but you have to make it a strength and say, I was in such a good position that I never had to stick my neck on the line. And you have to make it seem like your alliances and your friendships with the people who got you to the end made you insulated in a way that you were safe and you didn't have to risk yourself. And then also make your decision to side with them and follow them, make it seem like an active strategic move that you were making rather than like a passive, I guess I'll just stick with them and ride it out. So to me, that is how a GOAT could make their case to win Survivor, and I think if you had a persuasive enough person, they could definitely do it. And yeah, that's really all I got, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.